NEA Big Read is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. Local sponsorship is provided by the Muskogee County Friends of Libraries. Hello and welcome to the Chattahoochee Valley Library's first ever virtual NEA Big Read. So what is the NEA Big Read? Quite simply, it is a program designed to get communities to read and discuss a single book. Each year, the National Endowment for the Arts awards 75 communities nationwide a grant to celebrate a work of literature through events, book clubs, lectures, and more. Those of you that live in the Chattahoochee Valley will know that this is not our first NEA Big Read. Indeed, it is our 12th. You may remember some of our past events celebrating U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo, our own Carson McCullers, Zora Neale Hurston, Tim O'Brien, and more. So this year, instead of all the many community events we normally host in person, we're moving the entire celebration online. That way you can participate at a time and place that's convenient for you. And this year, it is our pleasure to be celebrating a new American classic, CIRCE, by Madeline Miller. The character Circe appears as a minor character in many old texts, most notably the Odyssey and Metamorphosis. But where Homer, Ovid, and the other classical authors depict her as weak or evil, Miller reimagines her as a complex, passionate, and strong-willed woman. The book, it is a remarkable reimagination of one of humanity's enduring tales. And to give you a bit of background about the work, it's my pleasure to introduce the author of Circe, Madeline Miller.
Hello, I'm Madeline Miller, the author of The Song of Achilles and Circe. I have loved the Greek myths since I was a child. I studied them in high school and then went on to continue studying them in college. But there was one thing that I couldn't help but notice, even as I was loving them. It was how flat many of the female characters were, or non-existent. There was one character in particular that kept jumping out at me, that I kept wanting more from, and that was the character of Circe. Circe is infamous in Greek mythology for her appearance in the Odyssey, where she turns Odysseus's men into pigs. She's a witch, and she's also a goddess, the daughter of the sun god Helios. But one of the burning questions that was never answered for me every time I read her story in the Odyssey is, why is she turning men into pigs? Homer doesn't tell us, and Odysseus never asks. That question, why is Circe turning men into pigs, and all the questions that went with it, like how did she come to live on an island with tame lions and wolves, and where does she get her powers from, and what is witchcraft in the ancient world anyway, and how do you become the first witch? All those questions were things that I wanted to dig into, but not in the context of an academic paper. I wanted to dig into them in a novel form. Now, one of the things about Circe that I loved is that she's an artist. Her witchcraft, as I came to see it, is really her creative expression, and that's what she uses to transform the world around her. So in order to understand her story better, I began reading all the versions of her myths that I could find from the ancient world, always with an eye to thinking, how can I put her at the center of the story? How can I understand her psychology? How can I dig into Circe? Luckily for me, Circe has a lot of really interesting mythological allusions. Her father, as I said, is Helios, the sun god, one of the great titans of the ancient Greek pantheon. She is also the aunt of the Minotaur and the aunt of Medea, one of the other great witches in ancient literature. Aside from that, Circe has a number of adventures that have absolutely nothing to do with Odysseus. So what I was really excited about in writing this novel was sort of tracking Circe's life, all the things that happened to her before that action in the Odyssey, and then all the things that happen after. Now, for me, the character of Circe has always been one that has felt very relatable, even though she's a 3,000-year-old ancient Greek witch. One of the things I loved about her, aside from her being an artist, is the fact that she is clearly struggling in a world that is hostile to her having power and hostile to her having a voice. Like many women, she is trying to find her place in a world that would deny her a place. Part of what I wanted to do was to give Circe a full psychology. to flesh her out as a character in her own right, not just a cameo that appears in the Odyssey, not just an obstacle in Odysseus's path, not just the person who helps him on his journey. As part of that, I wanted to really push back against that portrait of her in the Odyssey, the portrait of her as just a small piece of Odysseus's story. So as a little teaser, I thought I would read this section from the novel. The he in the passage is Odysseus, and it's one of the few times that Circe, my Circe, explicitly references the Odyssey. Later, years later, I would hear a song made of our meeting. The boy who sang it was unskilled, missing notes more often than he hit, yet the sweet music of the verses shone through his mangling. I was not surprised by the portrait of myself, the proud witch undone before the hero's sword, kneeling and begging for mercy. Humbling women seems to me a chief pastime of poets, as if there can be no story unless we crawl and weep. I hope you enjoy the novel, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. If you'd like to hear more from Ms. Miller, please check out her interview with the PBS program Now Hear This. We've included a link to that show in the description for this event. So one of the great things about this particular book is it also allows us to revisit the Odyssey, which is the legendary epic poem by Homer that details King Odysseus' return home after the Trojan War. So to learn more about both Circe and the Odyssey, we have a number of special programs planned for this upcoming month. Poet and playwright Dr. Cary Scott Wilkerson will be giving his appreciation for the Odyssey in a special podcast. Dr. Claire Black McCoy will show how the Odyssey and other classical works have found their way into art throughout the millennia, including works portraying Circe. Using Joseph Campbell's hero's journey as a prototype, we will examine how literature such as Circe, along with cinema and the visual arts of the last century, have created a new pattern of myth, the heroine's journey. Finally, we'll show some examples of how pervasive the Odyssey is in our popular culture, including appearances in places you might not expect. In addition, we'll have some great short programs that feature crafts, cooking, self-help, and more, all inspired by our NEA Big Read book. Plus, we'll have book clubs that meet both online and through chat rooms so that you can discuss the book with your fellow readers. Now, there is one place that you can find a complete listing of all of our events, and that is the Chattahoochee Valley Libraries website, cvlga.org. Just click on the tile marked NEA Big Read Events. That will take you to our complete listing. As programs debut, the links to them will be live on this page. Our programs will be available on YouTube and Facebook. One of the benefits of hosting virtual programs is that they'll remain available to you from their debut through the end of March, so you can join us at your convenience. We look forward to a great month of programming in celebration of this incredible novel. We hope to see you at one or more of our NEA Big Read events. Thank you.